You smell like the street, Harper scoffed, wrinkling her nose as the old man stepped into the hotel lobby, dragging worn shoes across marble floors that sparkled beneath golden chandeliers. She didn't whisper it. She wanted him to hear. She wanted everyone to hear. Her laugh, sharp and cold, echoed off the pristine columns of the Carlton Regal. The man said nothing. He just looked at her, eyes tired, ancient, and unreadable. He wore rags, literal rags. A coat so tattered it flapped behind him like a flag from a war long lost. His beard was white and unkempt. His hands were weathered, knuckles cracked from cold. He didn't belong in this. There was steel in his eyes. Calm power, something royal hidden beneath the wreckage. "I'm Walter Grayson," he said softly. "And 50 years ago, I was thrown out of this hotel with my father, the janitor, when I tried to bring him tea during his night shift. You were 6. You cried because your lollipop fell on the floor. My dad mopped it up." Harper's lips parted. A distant memory flickered. The janitor, the kid, the lollipop. She didn't remember his name, but she remembered the kindness, the mop, the tired smile. "I told my father I'd come back here one day," Walter whispered. "Not through the back door, through the front." It was a rainy afternoon when Chloe, the sharply dressed front desk manager of the luxurious Bexley Grand Hotel, first noticed the old man. He stood just outside the automatic doors, drenched from the storm, holding a tattered leather satchel and wearing boots that looked decades old. His gray beard was wild, his coat torn at the sleeves, and his eyes were tired but kind. Chloe sighed loudly and whispered to her coworker, "Why do they always come here? This is not a shelter." She didn't know someone had heard her. Across the lobby, 12-year-old Max sat quietly on a bench near the grand piano, playing with a Rubik's Cube. He was staying at the hotel before the banks, before the suits. Max was silent. He didn't understand all of it, but he felt the weight of the man's words. Hours passed. Max asked if he could show Henry something, and the two wandered down the hall to the kids' art corner. Max pulled out his crayons and began to draw, beside Henry. "I want to build houses for kids with no homes," he said. "Big ones, with slides inside." Henry chuckled. "That's a good dream." Chloe came storming in. "Enough," she snapped. "Mr. Rivers would not approve of his son spending time with strangers." But Max stood up, chin lifted. "He's not a stranger. He's nice. He listens." Just then, the elevator dinged. Nathan Rivers stepped out, exhausted, adjusting his tie. He paused, confused by the scene, his son defending a homeless man holding crayons. Chloe rushed over. "Sir, this man is—" But Max interrupted. "Dad, this is Henry. He's kind. He used to dream about a hotel, like this one." Nathan's brow furrowed as he looked closer at the man. Henry Lennox?" The old man stood, face still and quiet. "Yes, Nathan. It's been a long time." Chloe's mouth dropped. You know him?" Nathan nodded. He looked to Max. "Should I go?" Max nodded. "Yeah. But come back, okay?" Henry followed Nathan to the elevator as Chloe turned red with shame. She tried to speak, but Max just said, "You didn't even ask his name." That evening, something incredible happened. The lights dimmed in the ballroom where an emergency board meeting had been called. Investors were confused. The room buzzed with voices until Nathan entered, followed by Henry. "Ladies and gentlemen," Nathan said, "you've trusted me with this company. But the man beside me once trusted me with a dream, and I forgot that dream until today." Henry stepped up, holding the same sketch he'd shown Max. "This hotel, it was once an idea drawn in a library. I gave it to Nathan when he was just a student. He made it real. But I was never invited in until a child offered me a seat." The board members listened in stunned silence. Then slowly, one by one, they stood and began to applaud. Chloe watched from the back of the room, tears in her eyes. And as Max peeked in from the hallway, he whispered to himself, "Told you he was special." The applause thundered like rain on glass. But this time, Henry was not outside. He was home. The boardroom buzzed with applause, but for Chloe, the sound felt to hold back. Tears. "I forgot how to see," she said. "I forgot that people don't need approval to be valuable." Max looked up and whispered, "Dad says good people make room at the table, even if their chairs are already full." Chloe smiled sadly. "Your dad's right." Then she turned to Henry. "May I sit?" He nodded, and she joined them. This time as a listener. Later that night, as the hotel emptied and the guests disappeared into their suites, Chloe found herself walking to the staff quarters. She knocked gently on housekeeping's lounge and peeked inside. "Maria," she called softly. The older woman looked up, surprised. "Miss Chloe?" Chloe stepped in, shoulders lower than usual. "I want to ask you something. How do you always stay so kind?" Maria blinked, confused. "Because I've been poor before," she answered simply, "and kindness is the only thing that never ran out." Chloe sat with her for over an hour, listening to stories of sacrifice, long bus rides, and late-night meals shared between workers. She learned that the bellboy she often scolded was putting himself through night school, that the security guard she ignored helped send money back to his sick mother, that the janitor who hummed songs while mopping lost his son in the same war that built this hotel's fortune. And none of them ever complained. They just worked and smiled. Chloe's chest ached. Not with guilt had passed, but with something stronger, humility. At sunrise, Henry stood on the rooftop looking out over the city skyline. Nathan approached him quietly, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You didn't have to come back, Henry," Nathan said. "But you did. Why?" Henry didn't answer immediately. "Because your boy saw me," he finally replied. "And sometimes being seen changes everything." Nathan nodded. "I've built empires from contracts and steel. But Max is building something better, from questions and crayons." Downstairs, Chloe began rewriting the hotel's guest policy, this time with new language. Everyone deserves to be seen, no exceptions. Hospitality begins in the heart. She gathered the staff in the lobby that morning and read it aloud, her voice steady, her posture open. Some cried, some clapped, all listened. "From now on," she declared, "this hotel will not measure value by designer shoes or diamond watches. We will measure it by kindness, respect, and courage." And in the back of the crowd, Henry smiled. Chloe found Max in the art corner again, drawing a new hotel on bright yellow paper. "What's this one called?" she asked gently. Max grinned. "The Welcome Hotel, no one gets kicked out. And the saal? Pillows are really fluffy." Chloe laughed softly, crouching beside him. "I think you'd make a great manager." Max handed her the drawing. "Then you can have this one, in case you forget." She took it, her throat tight. "Thank you, Max." That evening, as the city lights began to twinkle once more, Chloe placed Max's drawing in a frame behind the front desk. Beneath it, she wrote, "Kindness is the highest standard." And though guests still came in designer coats and crisp suits, there was something new in the air. Something warmer, slower, more human. Staff smiled longer. Guests listened more. And when a man in worn boots walked in weeks later, Chloe walked right up to him and said, "Welcome, sir. We're honored to have you." Henry never asked for recognition. He never demanded revenge. He didn't need it. His moral awakening came not from anger, but from being remembered. And Chloe's came from remembering what she forgot long ago. That behind every pair of tired eyes is a story worthy of dignity, and every heart, no matter how hidden beneath wrinkles or rags, deserves to be seen. The lobby was crowded that afternoon, guests shuffling in with rolling suitcases and expensive colognes, their voices echoing against the marble floors. Chloe stood near the concierge desk, clipboard in hand, overseeing staff movements with the same perfectionist sternness she was known for. To her, every guest was a walking rating, and every misstep a potential disaster. That's why, when the old man with the tattered coat walked through the rotating doors, every muscle in her body tensed. He didn't belong here. Not in a place like this. His gray beard was tangled, his boots were worn, and his eyes, though gentle, looked out of place among the polished steel and crystal chandeliers. Chloe's eyes narrowed. She whispered to security and pointed discreetly. "Keep an eye on him," she said coldly. "If he approaches the lounge, escort him out." The man wandered quietly toward the lobby seating area, head down, seemingly lost in thought. As she returned to her checklist, a young boy dashed across the lobby, his sneakers squeaking loudly. It was Max, Nathan's son, who had come to wait for his father's meeting to end. Chloe noticed the boy make a sharp turn, straight toward the old man. "Max," she called, but he didn't stop. Instead, Max walked up to the man, looked at him with wide eyes, and smiled. "Hi," he said. "Why do your shoes look like mine after I jump in puddles?" Chloe's heart stopped. She stormed toward them. "Max, come here," she ordered. But the boy stayed planted. The old man chuckled softly and replied, "Because I've walked through a lot of storms, kiddo." Max tilted his head. "Do you like storms?" The old man nodded. "They show you what matters. Because kindness still belongs here. And your question yesterday, about storms, that mattered more than you know." Max beamed. Chloe, overwhelmed, stepped forward. "Mr. Lennox, I didn't recognize who you were." He looked at her calmly. "You weren't supposed to. That was the point." His words weren't angry. They were disappointed. And somehow, that felt worse. She clutched her clipboard tighter, but it felt empty now, like everything she had worked to build. Later, as the conference room emptied, Chloe approached Max in the hallway. You saw something I didn't," she said. Max nodded. "I just talked to him, like he mattered." Chloe knelt. "Do you think I can learn to do that too?" Max thought hard and said, "I think grown-ups just forget. But remembering is easy. You just stop looking at clothes and start looking at eyes." Chloe's eyes welled. For the first time in years, she felt something break loose inside her. A wall she hadn't known was there. That night, Chloe found Henry in the garden courtyard, seated near the old fountain he once scrubbed decades ago. She walked up slowly. "Mr. Lennox, I was wrong. I've been wrong for a long time, and I want to be better." Henry didn't move. "You can start by seeing people before judging them. Every guest, every cleaner, every cook. Their stories matter." Chloe nodded. "Will you help me learn?" He looked at her at last. "Only if you're willing to listen more than you speak." They sat in silence, but it wasn't cold anymore. It was peaceful. Chloe took a long breath. The old man she once dismissed had become the mirror she needed, reflecting everything she had lost in the name of control. Now, finally, she was ready to change. And that moment, quiet, simple, honest, was more powerful than applause, headlines, or even ownership. Because it was real. And real moments are what truly engage the heart. The days following the boardroom revelation passed slowly, almost reverently, as if the hotel itself were adjusting to the weight of new ownership. Staff began whispering softer, walking straighter, not out of fear, but awe. Mr. Henry Lennox, the old man in rags who now sat at the top of their hierarchy, didn't bark, orders, or showcase his wealth. He moved through the building like a gentle ghost of its past, polite, calm, watchful. But no one noticed that he always left before sunset, or that he never ate in the grand dining room, though he owned every silver spoon. What few knew, even Nathan Carter, the former owner, was that Henry hadn't bought the hotel for business. He had bought it to protect a memory, one he never spoke of. Decades ago, this hotel had been the only place in the city willing to give a teen runaway a job. Back then, his sister, Lila, was sick. Lungs ruined from factory air, too weak to work, too proud to beg. Henry had cleaned dishes by night and scrubbed marble tiles by day, all to buy her medicine. He never complained. He never told the manager. He just worked. He remembered every corner of this place. The boiler room where he'd slept once, too cold to walk home. The chandelier he polished. The hotel needed change, yes. But it didn't need more chandeliers or suits. It needed heart. And sometimes, Henry believed, the best way to serve others was in silence, without flashing power, without demanding recognition. That's why he never corrected Chloe in the lobby. He let her believe he was just a ragged old man because her actions needed to echo back to her soul. What no one saw was the old photograph he kept folded in his wallet. A picture of Lila, sitting on the hotel steps smiling through the pain. She'd died young, long before Henry made his first million. But her memory never faded. Every time he walked past the front desk, he whispered, "For her." So faintly no one could hear. The suite he reserved but never stayed in. It was the same room Lila had once cleaned, now preserved, untouched. The staff called it the ghost suite, unaware of its significance. Henry kept it that way. Some altars are too sacred for crowds. When the hotel announced a scholarship fund for children of housekeeping staff, Chloe assumed it was Nathan's idea. It wasn't. Henry had arranged it quietly under the name of the Lila Trust. He never explained the name, never held a press conference. Instead, he left envelopes, neatly typed, handwritten, signed, on the HR desk each month. Lives began to shift. One janitor's daughter got into art school. A dishwasher's son enrolled in nursing, no fanfare. Just doors opening quietly, like secrets whispered to the stars. One night, Chloe found Henry in the laundry room, alone, rolling wing. "And I used to find peace here." She watched him for a long time, the silence between them full of truth. "You could have fired me, you know, the way I treated you." Henry looked at her, his eyes kind. "But then, how would you learn?" She swallowed hard. "I'm trying. I really am." He nodded. "I know. That's why you're still here." Behind every quiet act was a lifetime of invisible sacrifice. Henry never spoke of the years he skipped meals to buy stock in this hotel. He never mentioned the nights he wept in silence when investors mocked his dreams. And he never told anyone how long he'd waited, just for a chance to buy back the place that had once given him dignity. He could have built condos, he could have torn it down, but he didn't. Because some things are worth more than revenge. Some victories aren't loud. They're silent, selfless, sacred. Even the valet who once chuckled when Henry approached in his ragged coat was later promoted, after Henry read his personnel file and saw how many double shifts he took to care for his autistic son. Henry made him head of guest reception, quietly. No praise, just trust. When the man broke down in gratitude, Henry simply said, "You've always had the heart. Now you have the role." That was Henry's way, lifting others without lifting his voice. One morning, Chloe arrived early and saw something she would never forget. Henry was in the kitchen before sunrise, frying eggs with the line cooks. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled up, apron tied neatly. "You know how to cook?" she asked in surprise. He nodded. "I used to make breakfast for the staff, back when I was nobody." She shook her head. "You've never been nobody. I just didn't see it." He gave a gentle smile. "Most people don't, until they're taught to look deeper." That afternoon, Max came running in after school and handed Henry a drawing. It showed the old man standing tall, with the words, "Real hero," written in crayon. Henry's hands trembled. He hugged the boy, eyes wet. Chloe stood behind them, watching the man who had bought a hotel not for power, but for purpose. A man who said little but meant everything. And in that moment, she understood that true legacy doesn't scream. It whispers. It sacrifices. And it endures, long after applause fades. The lobby was full, buzzing with guests as the clock struck noon, but Henry Lennox didn't hear the noise. He stood just inside the entrance, his ragged coat hanging off his thin frame, his eyes fixed ahead. To everyone else, he looked like someone who didn't belong, a misplaced shadow in a room of polished glass and gold. But Henry didn't flinch. He clutched the small, folded deed in his pocket, the signature fresh, and walked forward with a purpose carved from decades of sacrifice. He wasn't there to prove anything. He was there to protect what mattered. Across the room, Nathan Carter was already seated, checking his watch impatiently, completely unaware that the man walking toward him now would decide his fate. Chloe, elegant in her heels and tailored suit, spotted Henry first and frowned. "Sir, you can't stand here. This is a private meeting," she said, stepping into his path like a gatekeeper. Henry looked at her, not with anger, but quiet. Resolve. "Then tell your employer his new partner has arrived." Her eyes narrowed. "Partner?" He leaned closer and said, calm and unwavering, "I own this hotel now. Go tell him." Gasps rippled. Chloe's face paled. Nathan looked up, startled, as Henry removed a neatly folded envelope and placed it on the table. "You mocked the wrong man, Nathan," Henry said softly, "and you built your empire on the backs of people like me. But that ends today." Nathan opened the envelope with shaking hands. His eyes widened as he read the notarized transfer of ownership. This is," Henry cut him off, "legal, irrevocable, and earned." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence said what no volume could. The staff gathered around, unsure what to believe. Chloe's confusion turned to disbelief, then something else. Shame. But before she could speak, a security guard stepped forward, subtly reaching for Henry's arm. That was when Henry's eyes flared, not with fear, but with fierce protectiveness. He raised his hand. "Don't touch me," he said coldly. "If you remove me now, you'll answer to the board. I didn't build this fortune to be handled like trash again." The guard froze. Nathan waved him off. And just like that, Henry had reclaimed not just space, but respect. But his goal wasn't vengeance, it was reform. Within days, changes began. Not flashy renovations, but moral ones. Pay raises for housekeeping, health benefits for kitchen staff. A clear code of dignity for every employee, etched not in stone, but enforced by heart. Henry didn't care about profits the way Nathan did. He cared about protection. Of people who couldn't speak up, of workers who were told they didn't matter. He'd lived that life. He knew what it cost. And he swore no one under his roof would suffer as he once did. In board meetings, Henry didn't hide his past. He shared it plainly, so each executive could feel the weight of every ignored janitor, every mistreated bellhop. "You think success looks like suits," he told them. "But real power is doing right when no one's watching." Some scoffed, but most listened, because Henry's calm was thunder. His determination wasn't showy. It was steady, fierce, immovable. And it changed everything, slowly but deeply. One day, Chloe was summoned to Henry's office. She expected to be fired. Instead, he handed her a folder. "You said you cared about this hotel," he said. "Now prove it. You're the new operations director." She stared at him. "After what I did to you?" He nodded. "Exactly because of it. You know how it feels now. That makes you dangerous, in the right way." Her hands trembled as she took the folder. Henry looked her in the eye. "Protect them, like no one protected me." She nodded, swallowing tears. That was how redemption began. There were those who still doubted him. Rumors spread of how he couldn't possibly manage such a place, of how it was a stunt, a revenge play. But Henry didn't waste breath on them. He walked the halls daily, greeting every worker by name, learning their stories. One dishwasher, Rosa, broke down when he asked how her daughter was doing. "No one ever asked," she whispered. He put a hand on her shoulder and said, "Now someone always will." That was his armor, empathy forged in suffering, worn like steel. But his protectiveness wasn't just for employees. When a wealthy guest screamed at a server one evening, Henry didn't send security. He walked out himself, calmly, and asked the man to leave. "We don't tolerate cruelty here," he said. "Not from anyone." The guest laughed. "Who are you to tell me that?" Henry looked him dead in the eyes. "I'm the man who owns this hotel, and I won't let you poison it." The guest's smirk faltered. Moments later, he was gone, escorted out by the same staff he once dismissed. Max, the little boy who had once asked why the old man wore holes in his shoes, now ran to Henry each afternoon. They shared stories and smiles, the boy sensing that Henry wasn't just a man in charge. He was a shield. Chloe once caught Henry slipping a new backpack into Max's cubbyhole with a tag that read, "To the strongest boy I know." When she confronted him, he just said, "I wasn't there for my sister when I should have been. I won't fail again." His voice cracked. His face didn't. Every time the board questioned a cost he approved for staff welfare, he held the line. "We're not building a palace," he'd say. "We're building a home, and homes are safe, or they're nothing at all." Some thought he was naive, but the numbers didn't lie. Turnover dropped, guest reviews soared. And the people, those often overlooked, stood taller. Because someone believed in them, fought for them, protected them. Not from behind glass walls, but shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand. His legacy wasn't a grand staircase or a penthouse. Sweet. It was Rosa's smile, Max's laughter, Chloe's transformation. It was in the man who once slept on the kitchen floor, now leading the team with pride. Henry Lennox had returned, not for revenge, but for protection. And his shield? It was quiet, gentle, but unbreakable. In every act, he whispered a silent promise. "As long as I breathe, no one under this roof will be left behind." The marble floors gleamed as Henry Lennox walked the halls of his newly acquired hotel, his presence calm, yet commanding. To the EK, guests and staff, he was the surprising new owner, the once ridiculed man who had revealed himself as a quiet titan. But what no one knew was that beneath his composed surface, Henry carried a secret so heavy it had shaped every decision he made. Behind every smile, every policy change, was a face. A girl's face, forever frozen in time in his memory. Years back, when Henry was working as a night janitor in a crumbling roadside inn, he had taken on double shifts to help a single mother who worked in the kitchen. That mother was sick. Cancer, untreated, undiagnosed until too late. Henry had watched Lily, barely 7, wait in the break room every night for her mom to finish. She had big eyes, dirt-smudged shoes, and a habit of humming quietly as she drew pictures on napkins. Henry had grown attached. Too attached, he would tell himself later. The night her mother collapsed was the night Henry's entire world changed. Paramedics came too late. No family stepped forward, and social services arrived swiftly to take Lily away. But Lily had clung to Henry, sobbing, whispering, "Please don't let them take me." That moment haunted him more than any other. He had stood frozen, helpless. No legal power, no way to protect her. The next morning, the room where she had once waited was silent. Her crayon drawings were still scattered on the floor. And Henry never saw her again. That was the last time Henry walked into work. He vanished from the city, sold what little he owned, and quietly funneled what savings he had into a private investigator's hand with one instruction: find Lily. Years passed, no trace. But Henry never stopped. He worked odd jobs, lived in shelters, took classes at night, and quietly began investing, bit by bit, in companies others ignored. Solar startups, community tech firms. He slept in old cars, ate from food trucks, and built a portfolio no one saw coming. And still, Every investment was for her. When he bought the hotel, people thought it was a power move, a grand response to years of being humiliated by people like Chloe and Nathan. But they didn't know that he chose that hotel because it stood just 5 blocks from the last known foster home Lily had been sent to. Every morning before opening, Henry walked past that quiet brick building, hoping, praying for a glimpse. He asked around gently. No one remembered. She would be in her 20s now, maybe a student, maybe a mother herself, maybe gone. One night, as he walked the hotel's back corridors, he found himself in the break room. It was empty, quiet. Then he saw it, taped to the vending machine, a child's drawing. It was new, clumsy, clearly recent. A little girl holding hands with a tall man wearing a janitor's uniform. His heart stopped. Written underneath, in crooked crayon, "Mr. Hank, my hero." He grabbed the paper with trembling hands. Mr. Hank. Only one person had ever called him that. He rushed to the front desk, asking which family had checked in with a little girl recently. The clerk blinked. Just one. A woman named Ellie Mae, room 409, checked in for one night, paid in cash. Henry's hands shook. The child? 6 years old, sweet, talked a lot, said her grandpa once cleaned floors too. Henry ran to the room, but it was empty, already checked out. Sheets folded, but left behind on the dresser, carefully placed, was an envelope. No name, no markings, just one line inside. "I found your drawing, Mr. Hank, I remember, and I'm safe now. Thank you." His knees buckled. It was her. Lily was alive. He sat on the edge of the empty bed, that note gripped in his weathered hands, and wept for the first time in 20 years. Not out of sorrow, but release. She was out there. She remembered him. And somehow, after all that time, she had come back just long enough to say thank you. That was why he had built everything. Not to be seen, not to be admired, but to be found. And now, though she had vanished again, he knew. Lily wasn't lost. She had become someone strong, someone free. From that day on, Henry never revealed her identity to anyone. Not even Chloe, not even Max. It was his sacred memory, untouched. But his policies grew even more protective. He built a foundation for children of single parents, hired former foster kids as interns, created a scholarship in the name LM Hope Grant. No one knew what the initials meant, but every time he signed one, Henry smiled quietly, hand resting briefly over his heart. It was his secret and his strength, a quiet vow that would live beyond his name. One evening, Max sat beside him and asked, "Why do you do all this? You already have money. You already own the place." Henry looked out the window, then at the boy. "Because once I let someone down, and I promised I never would again." Max frowned. "Did they forgive you?" Henry smiled faintly. "I think they did." Then he placed the child's drawing into a frame and hung it in the break room, right above the vending machine. No label, just the picture. Chloe saw it days later and wiped a tear from her eye, though she never asked. It remained there, year after year. Guests came and went, managers changed, the hotel won awards. But that single drawing, faded and crinkled, stayed untouched. A secret in plain sight. A tribute to a girl who once whispered, "Please don't let them take me." And to the man who made sure no child would have to beg that way again. Chloe sat at the corner of the executive lounge, legs crossed, phone in hand, but her mind elsewhere. Just a week ago, she'd laughed, loudly, mercilessly, at the old man in the lobby. His coat was torn. His shoes were crusted with dried mud. He had asked for water. She'd told him the hotel didn't cater to his kind. And now, that same man owned the entire place. Every hallway she walked down, every room she entered, she felt eyes on her. Not his. her own guilt mirrored through every reflection, every memory. She hadn't just mocked him once. She had done it several times. She was the one who told the front desk to escort him out. She was the one who whispered to guests, laughing, calling him Dusty Dan. She'd even filmed a short video of him walking away, posted it online, with the caption, "Hotel or homeless shelter." Her followers had loved it. But the next morning, the hotel buzzed with news. The old man had bought the entire property. No announcement, no speech, just a transfer of ownership and silence. That echoed louder than any scandal. Now, every time she saw him in the hallway, he only nodded gently. No anger, no aid. I was just entitled. Henry's eyes softened. Same thing. She broke down in front of him, sobbing like a child, all the guilt and shame pouring out. Henry listened without interruption. Then he got up, poured her water, and said, "Your apology doesn't erase it, but it's the first brick of a new foundation. Lay it strong." From that moment on, Chloe didn't just change, she transformed. She took night classes in social work. She used her platform to spotlight the homeless. She turned the lounge into a community room on weekends, the same place where she once mocked, now echoed with hope. But even as she rebuilt herself, the guilt still lived in quiet corners of her heart. Until one night, while closing up, she found a sticky note on her desk. It read, "You saw me dirty, but I saw you lost. Now you're finding your way. Keep going." It wasn't signed, but she knew who wrote it. And for the first time in a year, she smiled without sadness. Henry had given her something far greater than forgiveness. He had given her a second chance, one she would spend a lifetime earning. Chloe sat at the corner of the executive lounge, legs crossed, phone in hand, but her mind elsewhere. Just a week ago, she'd laughed, loudly, mercilessly, at the old man in the lobby. His coat was torn. His shoes were crusted with dried mud. He had asked for water. She told him the hotel didn't cater to his kind. And now, that same man owned the entire place. Every hallway she walked down, every room she entered, she felt eyes on her, not his. Her own guilt mirrored through every reflection, every memory. She hadn't just mocked him once, she had done it several times. She was the one who told the front desk to escort him out. She was the one who whispered to guests, laughing, calling him Dusty Dan. She'd even filmed a short video of him walking away, posted it online with the caption, "Hotel or homeless shelter." Her followers had loved it. But the next morning, the hotel buzzed with news. The old man had bought the entire property without interruption. Then he got up, poured her water, and said, "Your apology doesn't erase it, but it's the first brick of a new foundation. Lay it strong." From that moment on, Chloe didn't just change, she transformed. She took night classes in social work. She used her platform to spotlight the homeless. She turned the lounge into a community room on weekends, the same place where she once mocked, now echoed with hope. But even as she rebuilt herself, the guilt still lived in quiet corners of her heart. Until one night, while closing up, she found a sticky note on her desk. It read, "You saw me dirty, but I saw you lost. Now you're finding your way. Keep going." It wasn't signed, but she knew who wrote it. And for the first time in a year, she smiled without sadness. Henry had given her something far greater than forgiveness. He had given her a second chance, one she would spend a lifetime earning. Months passed, and the hotel was no longer just a place to sleep. It became a sanctuary. The walls whispered stories of change, of battles fought quietly and hearts transformed, boldly. Chloe ran the front desk with a calm strength, no longer the skeptic who once sneered at Henry's presence, but now the protector of everything he stood for. The old chandeliers were still dim, the carpets still worn, but the atmosphere had changed. Guests who had nowhere else to go were welcomed with tea, with blankets, with names spoken gently instead of ID numbers barked at them. Every Tuesday evening, a community meal was served in the dining hall. Not for guests, but for anyone on the street, anyone forgotten by the city's pace. And Henry, now no longer in rags but in a clean sweater and polished shoes, sat at the head of the long wooden table. Children climbed into his lap with drawings. Elders leaned in to share stories. He never asked for recognition, but they gave it anyway. A small brass plaque was placed beside the fireplace with the words, "In honor of the man who made room for us when no one else would." Chloe found herself growing into her role not just as a manager but as a mentor. She started a training program for young adults who had aged out of foster care, giving them roles in the hotel, housekeeping, kitchen, reception. Some struggled, some broke down. But Chloe never turned away a single one. "If Henry didn't give up on me," she often said, "I won't give up on them." Her voice carried wisdom now, not arrogance. The transformation had rooted deeply within her. She no longer cared about appearances, but about presence, kindness, dignity. Then, one spring afternoon, a surprise visitor stepped through the hotel doors, a sharply dressed man holding a small duffel bag. Chloe recognized him immediately. "You're one of the men from the rooftop," she said calmly. He nodded, ashamed. "I came to see what I tried to destroy." She motioned toward the community board, filled with pictures and handwritten thank you notes. "This is what you almost turned into rubble." He lingered there, then turned to her. "Is there a room?" Chloe tilted her head. "You can't afford one?" He smiled bitterly. "Not anymore." She handed him a key without hesitation. Henry watched from across the lobby and smiled quietly. It was the full circle moment he had prayed for. Chloe had become what he hoped she would be. And the world was slowly bending toward something softer, more just. As the sun streamed through the tall windows and lit up the brass plaque in his name, Henry rose and walked out to the garden, where wildflowers now bloomed over the soil he once tilled alone. Children played nearby. Laughter echoed. There were no guards, no velvet ropes, just life. Messy, beautiful, real. And on the hotel's 100th anniversary, Chloe stood beneath the old entrance arch, reading a speech written not by her, but by Henry. He was too weak to attend. His time was nearing, but his words were strong. This hotel once held only beds. Now it holds memories. It held profits. Now it holds people. It was once mine, but now it belongs to you, to everyone who chooses compassion over pride. The crowd erupted into applause, and just then, the hotel lights flickered to full brightness, as if even the building knew it had finally come alive. Chloe visited Henry that evening in his room. He was lying in bed, sun spilling onto his face. "They loved your words," she said softly. He gave a tired smile. "They weren't mine. They were what I learned watching you." She sat beside him and held his hand. "You saved me, Henry. You changed me." He nodded slowly. "And now you'll do the same for others." There was peace in his eyes. No fear, no regret, just hope. A few hours later, Henry passed away quietly in his sleep, and when they found him, he was smiling. Chloe arranged his funeral in the garden. No grand cathedral, no marble headstone, just a bench under a blooming tree with his name carved into the wood. People came from cities away, former guests, staff, strangers who had read about him. Each brought something: flowers, stories, tears. One homeless man placed a cup of hotel coffee beside the bench. Another left a child's drawing. And as the crowd sang softly, Chloe looked up and whispered, "We'll keep it going, Henry. I promise." A warm breeze stirred the leaves, as if answering. Back at the hotel, life resumed, but it was never ordinary again. The story of the man in rags who bought a hotel became a symbol across the state. Schools taught it, churches preached it, and the hotel itself was renamed the Caldwell Home. Not a hotel, a home. Chloe continued to run it not like a business, but like a mission. And every time someone walked in ashamed, broken, or forgotten, she'd smile and say, "Welcome. We've been waiting for you." Because now, the door would never be closed again. And for those who once mocked the man in rags, there was no bitterness, no revenge. Just a quiet reminder that people can change, and even the smallest act of kindness can echo for a lifetime. That's what Henry taught them all. And it's what Chloe vowed to pass on. Not through lectures, not through slogans, but through actions, through presence, through love. Because in the end, the man who wore rags gave them all something far more valuable than money. He gave them a new way to live. And he showed the world that sometimes the richest people are the ones who've lost everything, except their heart.